Welcome. My name is Marion Reeder. I use they, them pronouns. I am the culture and curricula coordinator at Project Commotion. I have pale skin, I have a buzz cut, I'm wearing blue glasses and a white and blue striped button-up shirt. We're sharing visual descriptions of ourselves this morning in case there are folks who are not able to look at their screens right now, or for whom visual descriptions just help them process a little bit better. My background is in arts education and early childhood mental health. I'm currently living in Seattle, Washington, getting my master's in social work.
And hello, everyone. My name is Annie Aguilar. I use she, her pronouns, and I am also managing our chat and participants. So you'll see me maybe looking around, making sure everyone's included. I've worked with Project Commotion for a number of years now in different roles. I'm also a dancer. And right now I'm in chiropractic school. I moved from California this past year to Minneapolis, Minnesota to study chiropractic medicine. So it's been amazing to learn about the body in a different capacity and bring that information and love to Project Commotion.
I also wanted to mention during this workshop, you might see me going back and forth. I'm in front of two screens. So if you see me looking off to the side, I'm still here, I'm still present. I'm just looking around to make sure all of our tech is working well. We would love to get to know a little bit about you folks in the room today. So if you'd like to put your name and where you're from in the chat, that would be lovely. While we're doing that, I'm going to offer a land acknowledgement for Project Commotion. If you're interested in learning about the Indigenous land that you are living on, Annie's going to put a link in the chat. You can go in and search your location and find out where you are living. So Project Commotion is a community-based organization located in the Mission District in San Francisco. Our home base and community are located on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. And we recognize that as the original stewards of this land, the Ramaytush Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and have maintained harmony with nature for millennia. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples for their enduring and ongoing commitment to Mother Earth. If you have a chance to look at that link and also want to include in the chat where you're joining us from, what native lands you are on today, that would be fantastic.
And Marion, I see we have a question from Mona. Are you raising your hand, Mona? You can.
Yes. Hello, nice to meet you. I would like to know that how can I access for recording?
Oh, for the recording. So this workshop is being recorded as right now. And then after the workshop ends later this week, we'll have that recording available as a link for all of those who have registered for the workshop.
And how can I get that link? Are you guys email us or put it on chat if it's possible?
Exactly. I will email to the same address where I've been emailing you how you logged in today. It'll be the same kind of communication. Thank you for asking. Appreciate that question.
Thank you very much.
And while I am unmuted, I also wanted to offer a visual description of myself. I forgot to do so right after I introduced, but I am biracial, half white, half Mexican, big curly hair, white tan skin, and I'm smiling.
Awesome. So we're going to get started. We're going to use a tool called Jamboard today for some of our participation and reflection time. And we wanted to offer everyone a chance to get acquainted with that software in case you haven't used it. So Annie is going to put a link in the chat to our Jamboard. When you click on that link, you'll see something similar to what is on the screen right now. And just our little icebreaker question is, what is or was your favorite physical game as a child or right now? When you go to the Jamboard, you'll see a little sticky note icon on the left side of your screen. You can click that sticky note, type in your answer, click save. If you want to choose a fun color for it, you can. And then you can drag your sticky note around the Jamboard and we'll watch everyone's favorite games come in. If the Jamboard is giving you any trouble, feel free to ask us questions, or you can also put your answer to this question in the chat if that ends up being easier. While you all are navigating to that link, I'll leave these instructions up for just a minute and then I'll change the screen over to the Jamboard so we can see everyone's answers. All right, I'm going to move us over there. Here is our Jamboard. Oh my goodness, we have amazing answers coming in. We have softball, dodgeball, basketball, swimming in the pool, red light, green light, dancing in the kitchen with my mom, kickball, dodgeball, swimming, dance parties. So many different kinds of movement and games. I see a lot of joy in all of these different kinds of movement activities. Kick the can, badminton. These are all fantastic. I also like that we have a lot of similarities in what everyone is sharing. We have lots of swimming. We have a couple of dodgeballs. Very cool. All right, feel free to keep adding here if you'd like to. Egg and spoon race. So there's one more. See it. Egg drop. Oh, so cool. So many great games. Feel free to keep adding if you would like. And we'll come back to our Jamboard a little bit later for some reflection and Q&A time. So we wanted to do a little bit of an introduction to Project Commotion. Project Commotion is a community-based organization in San Francisco, as I mentioned, and our mission is to foster healthy development in children of all abilities through purposeful movement, play, family, and community relationships. And the way we do this is we have a number of programs. So our community programs, the ones where we outreach into the community, are Schools on the Move program, where we have residencies at early childhood centers and elementary schools where our teaching staff goes in and offers weekly movement classes for the students and some education for teachers. And then we have our Community Move program, which is what you are currently participating in, where we offer workshops to various communities for educators and parents and caregivers. And we get a chance to connect with the community to learn how best to support the young people in our lives. We also have a brick and mortar studio in the Mission District where we have an early childhood program that is a play-based program that serves children 2 to 5. We also have movement classes, after school movement classes for children and adults. We have a range of really awesome different types of classes that we offer, from capoeira to creative movement to dance. And then during our summertime, we offer a summer camp for school-aged youth. So that's a little bit about Project Commotion. We have a lot of different awesome programs that are all tying back to that mission around supporting healthy development through movement and play. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the intention of this workshop, as well as the agenda, the different activities that we're going to move through today. So the reason that we developed this workshop is we wanted to create something that centers children's needs for meaningful relationships with the adults in their lives. Those relationships are so central to healthy development. And as we've seen connection become limited for so many families and young people during the ongoing pandemic, we're seeing that children's social, emotional, and relationship needs are higher than ever. And so we wanted to spend some intentional time talking about actionable ways that you as educators can use movement to support these social emotional needs, to connect deeply with students, as well as how you as an educator can build some compassionate body awareness with yourself to help you show up in your teaching practice in ways that help you care for yourself and the students that you're working with. So we'll have a chance, we've done a little bit of an introduction about ourselves, about Project Commotion. We'll go over some group agreements and the learning outcomes for today. And then Annie's gonna lead us in a really lovely embodied warm-up. We'll do a little bit of conversation about the connection between movement and social emotional development. We'll dive into that personal, compassionate body awareness. We will share some actionable tools for you to take into the classroom. We'll have some time for reflection, and then hopefully we'll have enough time to do a little bit of freeze dance at the end. And in the middle, we will have a 10-minute break. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to Annie for our group agreements.
Thank you, Marion. So in order to make all of that happen on our agenda, we have some group agreements, and you can let us know in the chat if there's anything that you don't agree with or anything you'd like to add. We hope that everyone is present with the intention to learn today. That includes asking questions and using the chat as you'd like. Please use it. This workshop is for you, so any question or comment you have just enhances the experience. Please take care of yourself as you need during the workshop. We understand that life is busy, and we hope that this can be an opportunity in which you can give yourself some care, whether that's drinking water, eating a snack, lying down while you listen. All of that is welcome. Please, privacy. So what is shared here stays here, whether that's about a student or a coworker or yourself as a teacher. We want to keep everyone safe. On the flip side, what is learned here leaves here. So please share these tools with anyone you'd like. Keep yourself muted, as you all are when you are not speaking, so we don't have cross sounds and confusion. And finally, I already mentioned it, but use the chat as you'd like. And we'd like to share learning outcomes so that you know where we're going and why with all of the information that we talk about today. We hope that you are able to affirm the importance of compassionate connections with our bodies. We hope that you learn about the importance of nonverbal communication in early childhood, and that you understand how to use movement to build relationships with children by the end of this workshop. You will all practice playful movement activities that can be used in the classroom. And together we will share takeaways for ourselves and for our classrooms around movement and connection, so that you leave today with actionable items, as Marion said, to take with you and apply tomorrow. With that, let's get moving. Let's get into our bodies. We're talking about our bodies in movement, so let's put it into practice. We'll be doing a warm-up, and at Project Commotion, we always start our workshops with a warm-up or movement activities in the classroom with a warm-up, because sometimes it does take that transition to go from whatever you're doing before to getting in touch with what's happening in your body. And we'll also get our blood pumping a little bit. So this warm-up is for you as the adults you are. I'll speak to you as adults. And then halfway through, I'll begin to speak to you as students, since we're doing both in this workshop as educators. So just be prepared for a change in tone. And it's so that you can easily apply the warm-up for your classroom after. So with that, Marion, you can spotlight my camera or I can spotlight myself right here. And so you should see my face nice and big on your screen. You can keep your camera on or off for this, and I'll keep my camera on. Wherever you're seated or standing or lying down, get really comfortable. Make sure you have enough space to stand up around you. And we'll find a nice tall seat in our spines. Bringing your spine back so that your head is over your shoulders and your shoulders are over your hips here. Hands are resting onto your lap. Elbows nice and heavy. And your feet are on the floor. We'll start gentle, tapping into our senses and move from there. So if you're feeling safe and ready to, you can begin to close your eyes. And taking a breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. We're pausing to listen to our breath. How it moves in and out of the body. And how it feels to take this time to listen. A deep breath in through the nose. Exhaling out through the mouth. Allowing the body to relax. From here, with your eyes closed, you can begin to tune into any sounds that you might hear, either in your room or space. Maybe you're outside. So sounds that are near you, and then sounds that are far away from you, maybe in the next room or outside. What do you hear? Are there any smells that you notice where you are? Whatever they may be. And then with your next exhale, you can flutter your eyes open and begin to take a look around whatever space you're in, just noticing. Looking all around you, up above you, down to the ground, seeing your feet and legs. And we'll look behind us, twisting to do so. Looking behind our bodies is a really important cue that our body looks to for safety, to know that we're safe. I think it's really easy to forget to look behind you nowadays with the use of screens, or maybe we're preoccupied helping a child. But when you can, look behind throughout the day and see if that makes a difference for you. And then eventually, as you're looking around the room, we'll pause on an object. And you'll do a notice checklist. So how close are you to that object and how far are you from it? What shape is it? What colors does it have? Does it provoke any kind of feeling for you? Does it bring up a memory or an emotion? And we'll simply let that go and find a different object to land on. Running through the same checklist. Am I far or close to that object? What shape is it? Colors? Does it make me feel any kind of way? Then we'll bring our eyes back to center. We'll begin to squeeze our arms in close to our body. Get ready to stand up, and this is when I'll speak to you as students. We took some time to look all around our space, so now let's take up some space with our bodies. Get really small And then we're going to open our arms nice and wide as you can. Stretch through the fingers. And once again, we'll hug everything close and then spread our arms out. Let's do the same thing standing. So push your chair back if you're sitting down, and then get really small. And then get really big. Make your body huge, tiny. Big star out in the sky. Come back to the earth like a rock. And let's be a star. And again, 3, big star. 2, big star. 1, blast off to outer space. And then as we come back to earth, let's make some tiny stars. So we're gonna make a tiny star. And we'll catch it. And an even smaller star. Catch it. Tiny, tiny star. 3, 2, oh, even smaller. Find your seat for the last star. 1. Oh, got it. We'll bring our hands to our laps. We can make some noise. Take a big breath in. Let your arms float down to your body. Maybe give yourself a hug, squeeze. Nice. Thank you all for joining for that warm-up. How do you feel? You can add to the chat if that changed anything for you, or if you notice anything different about your body, your breath, your mental state. Warm-ups, in my opinion, make a big difference in how I interact with whatever I'm doing moving forward. Oh, I love to read that. I feel great. Maybe Marion, you can read some of the things coming into the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep an eye on it. Body getting relaxed and warmer. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel like I was able to relax and really feel a little bit grounded. Definitely feeling relaxed. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm glad that had a positive impact. Mini yoga session. That's funny. I do teach yoga, so maybe it got incorporated. And Marion, I'm having troubles removing my spotlight. There we go. Okay. So thank you all for participating in that warm up. We hope that you can adapt it for your classroom, taking away any parts, adding parts, making it shorter, but we wanted to give you plenty of time to experience it today. So we've been talking a lot about movement. And at Project Commotion, we promote movement as a tool for children's healthy social, emotional, physical well-being. But what do we mean by movement? That's a pretty general word. And so right away, before we dive in, we're so curious, what is your relationship to movement? What words come to mind when you read or hear the word movement? Go ahead, add it to the chat, or if you're willing, please unmute and share. We'd love to hear from some of you. You can raise that Zoom hand and we'll click on you or call your name. Sarah, well, I'm not sure if this was referring to the warm-up or to movement, but I love what you wrote, so I'm going to read it. Grounded, present, imaginative, happy, curious. Wow, that's lovely. Thank you for bringing that energy into our workshop. So what is everyone's relationship to movement? Okay, group activities, walking, standing, flexible seating, group activities as well. Playing, physical activity, sports. A few more, let's hear it. We'll take one more minute. Dance, sports. This is great participation, everyone. Thank you so much for interacting. yoga as movement, walking and stretching, any words that come to mind, climbing, almost seems like infinite possibilities, huh? That's great. Okay, wrapping that up. If anyone has anything else to add, please go ahead, put it in the chat. We can all read it. Dance, embodiment, community. Love that. Moving our bodies. Moving our bodies. That's a great one to end on. Awesome. So as educators, gave some pretty expansive definitions of movement, which is awesome and what we wanted to introduce in this workshop. But we'd also like to recognize that it's pretty common, at least in the US, in the cultures that I grew up in, and maybe that some of you grew up in, that the word movement is often used just the same as the word exercise. And the word exercise is often phrased as work, right? So we have movement meaning exercise, exercise meaning work, and then all of a sudden movement means work. Does it have to mean more work? This is important because we're talking about incorporating activities into the classroom setting, right? We don't want to create more work for you as educators. We know that you already do an incredible amount of work every single day. We want to create awareness and joy, but it's important to address that, our relationship to the word movement. So we're moving all the time, as we saw from what everyone contributed to the chat, right? Lots of different words. I love that someone put fidgeting. Yes, that's movement. Or right now, I'm speaking with my hands a lot. That's movement. Brushing my teeth, driving the car, looking at the computer, but using my muscles to hold my body up. Movement can come in so many different forms, and we are always moving. We move in similar ways, in different ways, with our similar and different bodies, and our similar and different lives, right? Some of us, breathing is the most movement that we can do, and that is still movement. So how we define movement really changes with context, setting, school versus home, how you're feeling. If you have a lot of energy, or maybe you're sick and your body slows down. And even with specific activities, some of you mentioned sports, dance, so many different ways to move. So we're investigating this because when we do, we develop an awareness of how we're using our bodies at any given moment. And when we have an awareness of what we're doing with our bodies, then there's an opportunity there to ask, how does this make us feel? And when we ask, how does this make us feel? And we know how it makes us feel, then there's choice. We're able to make choices that better suit our body in the moment, either to sustain our energy throughout the day as teachers in rooms of students, or our students can also do this. Maybe they need to mix it up, take a calming activity instead of a high energy one, or the reverse. So choice is really important for building inclusive classrooms in doing this work sustainably as educators. So at Project Commotion, for this workshop, we're using the word movement to describe activities that are intentionally playful and educational, and that facilitate connection with our bodies and with each other. So we're getting specific about that, but just know that you can change this definition each and every day.
Awesome. So now that we kind of have a working definition for how we're thinking about movement for the purposes of this specific workshop, we want to chat a little bit about how movement is able to promote connection between people. So when we're first born, we don't have verbal or signed language, right? But we're still able to make these really, really meaningful, deep relationships with our caregivers and the adults in your lives. I'm sure that many of you have either seen or experienced, right, those really, really deep bonds that adults have with children who aren't even talking yet. And the way that we're able to create those relationships is through movement and body language. So we can kind of view movement and body language as children's first language. That is the first way that they're able to communicate before they're developing any sort of verbal or signed language. They're using eye contact and body movements and gestures to communicate with their caregivers. And then their caregivers are using eye contact and body gestures and ways of holding them to communicate things back. And so there's a reciprocal relationship that's created through all this sharing of nonverbal communication. And this is allowing infants to build trust and a feeling of safety with the adults in their lives. And so then when we think about students who are getting a little bit older, as children are starting to create relationships with each other, their first go-to for communicating with each other is things like observing and mirroring and initiating communication through face and gesture. They're falling back on all of these things that they had as an infant that helped them communicate with their caregivers now that they're learning to communicate and build relationships with their peers. So I want to give you a couple examples of this. I want to think about two children in a classroom who maybe want the same toy. If one of them is holding a toy and maybe someone else tries to grab it from them. And then we see the student who's holding the toy clutch it really close to their body and turn away. That is a whole conversation, right? The child who grabbed the toy is saying, I want that. And the child who's holding the toy is saying, this is mine, I'm using this. And that whole conversation has happened potentially without any words or maybe even any sounds. It's all happened through those nonverbal body movements and gestures. And we also see this coming up as young children are beginning to build skills of empathy and understanding others' emotions. So we might have a child in the classroom who's sad and starts to cry. And something that we might notice is other children might turn their bodies toward the child who is crying. They might share a sad face, kind of mirroring the sad face that they see on that other child. And some of the children might try to offer comfort in the form of hugs or pats. And again, that's really, you're seeing this connection being made between these students of, wow, I see you're sad. I'm going to show you that I see you're sad by kind of being sad myself. And all of that, again, is happening without a lot of words, without a lot of, saying, you look sad. And the last example I want to share is kind of how we as adults in the classroom are able to really respond and think about students' nonverbal communication. So I want to give an example of a child who is moving nonstop. They're crashing into pillows, they're climbing on bookcases, maybe they're wrestling with other students, they're running. They just seem to have this energy and this movement that isn't contained. And if we're looking at that through a lens of this child's movements, this child's nonstop movements are a form of communication to tell me something, we might be able to say, it seems like the student needs some extra sensory input to help regulate their body. We might need to offer them some different types of activities and input that can help them regulate that they aren't getting in just the regular classroom setting. And in this case, the child might not have been able to say to us, hey, I'm really dysregulated and I need some sensory input, but through their body movements and their actions, they've been able to communicate that, and we've been able to make a connection with that child without even having to have, an in-depth conversation with them. And so thinking about, as educators, we are able to tap into this like foundation of nonverbal communication that every child has to support their development of communication, of social emotional skills, and relationships with one another. And we can do this by engaging students in intentional movement practices that help them practice these ways of connecting and collaborating and observing each other, to form these relationships with teachers, with adults, and with peers in lots of different ways. So that was a lot of information kind of like about the development of how children are starting with these nonverbal communication ways of interacting with the world. And now we kind of want to take a step back into our own bodies, thinking about how us as teachers, how our bodies show up in a learning space and how that affects our connection and relationships with students.
Thank you, Marion. If anyone has questions at any time, a reminder, please add to the chat. And let's just all take a deep breath, breathing in and letting it go. I needed that. So just as Marion said, when we're talking about supporting young children with intentional movement, we are totally talking about building relationships with our bodies. And just like language, our relationships with our bodies are so influenced from what we learn from our caregivers, communities, and cultures. So just as we asked you all, what is your relationship with movement? We're also asking in many ways, what is your relationship to your own body? As we build our movement tools, we have a responsibility to continue to cultivate compassionate body awareness, or what we are calling compassionate body awareness. And this always starts with ourselves. I'd like to direct our attention to this quote by Sonia Renee Taylor. Her book is called The Body Is Not an Apology, and I have it here. I carry it with me often. And she writes, "It seems to me if ever there were a place where the practice of radical love could be a transformative force, the body ought to be that location. A radical self-love world is a world that works for every body. Creating such a world is an inside-out job. How we value and honor our own bodies impacts how we value and honor the bodies of others." And in our context as educators and caregivers, how we view and value and honor our own bodies in the classroom comes into our practice of educating students. In this workshop, we are calling this practice of compassionate body awareness, or we are calling this practice of developing this skill, compassionate body awareness. So the practice of compassionate body awareness. And I stumble over that just to emphasize that it is a practice. And it is the practice of understanding one's own body and others' bodies through a lens of love and a willingness to offer care. We understand that it's a lot to ask and a lot to take on. And so we're offering a simple tool on the next slide to get started. And you can see Marion has included the full name of the book if you'd like to find it. I highly recommend it. Again, it's a big ask, modeling compassion and body awareness for our students. And how do we start? Just as we said before, we start with ourselves. So it doesn't always feel like loving our bodies immensely each and every day and having every moment feel good. That's not what we're talking about when we talk about compassionate body awareness. We're talking about having a deep understanding for our body's capacity on any given day in the capacity of others, our community connection. How are your coworkers feeling, your co-teachers, the students in your classroom, building community around how our bodies are doing. So we'll share a simple tool. It's called a generous body scan. And this is a scan that goes from head to toe, so the tops of our bodies to the end of our bodies, all the spaces in between, to check in and see how each of those parts of our body are feeling. And all of the parts make up a whole, right? So how we are feeling. And this practice, it can be as long as 10 minutes or longer. It can also be as short as 1 minute. Maybe you have a moment when you're using the bathroom. Maybe that's your only quiet moment for the day, or sitting on the bus. Whatever it is, we hope that you can make time to check in with your bodies, with yourselves. I would like to emphasize that it is important that you feel relatively safe in your environment. And that's not always the case. So if you feel relatively safe, that maybe you're still feeling, there's times when I feel uncomfortable, but I know that my body is pretty safe in the space that I'm at. And that's a good time to practice this for the nervous system. Okay, let's jump in. Follow along, and Marion, you can spotlight my screen again. Thank you. Again, it'll just be on my camera. We'll start the same way as we did the warm-up, by getting comfortable wherever we are, in our seat, lying down. And you'll find your feet on the floor, and your hands in your lap, or anywhere that's comfortable for you. As soon as you're ready, you can begin to close your eyes and take a deep breath in, letting that breath go. And as you breathe in and breathe out, you're pulling your attention back to yourself. So much has come before this moment, and so much will come after. But for right now, we're giving ourselves that care. So let's check in, starting with the top of the head. Where is the top of our head in space, and how does our head feel, our face feel, our neck, as we trace in our mind's eye down those places? And trace around your shoulders, down the arms, the hands and fingers, in the front of the body, the chest and the core, in the back of the body. How is the top half of you doing? And we're just noticing, feeling. There's no need to change anything about it. Becoming aware. And we'll bring our attention down to the lower half of our bodies. Tracing around our hips, down our legs, front and back, and the feet, through the toes. How does this lower half of us feel? Are we connected to the ground, or is there a sense of floating? And after this time of noticing from head to toe how our body is doing today, how we are doing today, identify one place in your body that feels pretty good. Even if it's your pinky finger, your ankle, maybe your ear. Anywhere in your body that provides a sense of comfort and stability in the way it feels in this moment. All those other parts that are sore or achy, they can be there too. But we're focusing on somewhere that feels good. We can return to this spot anytime we need to throughout the day as a resource when we need extra support. It's in our body. We'll begin to shift our attention back to whatever's in front of us and take a breath in. As you exhale, you can flutter your eyes open again, see what's around you, looking front and back, and give yourself a squeeze, a hug. I'm right here. And that is our generous body scan. A reminder that it can be lengthened, it can be shortened, and it can be adapted to do with your students, probably a lot shorter, maybe adding some fun body learning as well. But this is more of a practice for you as educators because this work is a lot. And as we said before, the goal is not to add more to your plate. The goal is to make it more sustainable and joyful for yourselves. And part of adding movement is always asking, what is our relationship to our bodies? And so if you'd like to share in the chat how you feel after going through the body scan, please do. This is an awesome way to build connection through community, especially with coworkers. If you all do this together at the beginning of the day and then leads into conversation, checking in on one another, a deeper understanding for where everyone is at. And with an understanding of ourselves, we can open our hearts and our minds up to how others might be feeling. Thank you all so much for doing that. I'd also like to share a resource that I find very helpful for mindfulness and meditation. The teacher's name is Dora Camus, and she has a podcast all about the Sunday scaries, how you feel, maybe anxiety or nerves you feel on Sunday before beginning the work week, if you follow a traditional work week. And she also has an Instagram and a YouTube channel where you can practice different meditations. And she also includes a lot of body scans. So that's why I wanted to include her work. And here are the links in the chat for you all. And I'll pass it back to Marion for our break, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Marion.
So I feel very grounded and very calm after that body scan. And so we're gonna take a 10-minute break. So we're gonna come back right at 12 o'clock Pacific time and do whatever you need during this break time, get some water, get a snack, take a stretch. And when we come back, we'll have a chance to go over some movement activities that you all can bring into your classrooms. And we'll wrap up with some Q&A and reflection. So we'll see you back here at noon. Show us who your partner is going to be. That would be awesome. And if not, that's okay too. Annie has a pillow that she's going to be using. I'll give everyone a second to grab your movement partners. All right. So the way that we're going to do rocking and rowing, I'm going to turn a little bit sideways so you can see me, is we're going to hold our partner in front of us. And we're going to start as if our movement partner was an infant. So we're thinking like 10 months or younger. What we're going to do is we're going to put one hand behind their head and one hand on their back body. And we're going to rock back and forth. This is a great time to do row, row, row your boat. So row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. And when we do this with infants, so all of these very, very young kiddos, right, they're slowly developing the muscles to hold up their head. They're developing their core and their back muscles to really be able to sit up by themselves. And so being in this position where we're rocking back and forth is giving them some support and comfort to see different parts of the room and the space in a way that they might not be able to experience it on their own yet based on where their muscles are developing. This movement is also really, really reminiscent of different types of movements that babies feel while they're in the womb. And so this is just like a really, really comforting motion for babies to be in and out of. We see that when we're doing things like rocking them in rocking chairs as well, and helps them go to sleep. And also when you're doing this activity, we're face to face with the child. And something that infants really love is FaceTime. And so doing this, we can be talking, we can be singing songs, we can be making faces. And so by providing this support and this movement that is face to face, the baby's brains are lighting up. They're making so many connections, and we're really building that relationship and showing each other that we're a safe, fun person to move with. Okay, I want you to pretend that your movement partner is growing up a little bit. Maybe they're like 2.5 to 5 now. And they have all those muscles. They're able to sit up on their own. They're able to like roll forward, rock backward. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hold them by their hands. And you can kind of see this mirrored in the picture that's on your screen right now. So we're going to hold them by their hands. And this one, we're going to lean back and forth. We're going to do the rocking and rowing kind of at an arm's length. So this does take a little bit more work in our abdominals and in our backs to not only pull ourselves up, but to maintain that connection with the person that we're holding hands with. Excuse me. And this is a really great way for these toddlers and preschoolers to feel a sense of challenge and a sense of challenge in a teamwork perspective. And so we're working together, right? We want to see how far back you can go without falling over. So how am I going to support you? And then I want to see how far back I can go while you're supporting me. And again, we're having that face-to-face time. We're having conversations. Maybe we're going like, whoa, just really those like joyful, engaging, playful moments that are allowing us to connect with one another. And then as students get older, like pre-K, early elementary, they're going to be able to do this with each other. They're going to have the muscle coordination to be able to practice this with each other. And so they're going to be able to make connections with their peers in those way of doing those kind of challenges. And it gets a little bit more tricky when students are doing it with each other because, you know, you don't have one person who's an adult who has a much more integrated like body and nervous system. You have two younger people who are still kind of like figuring out how to be movers in the world. And so they get to practice a lot of teamwork and collaboration, which really strengthens their ability to connect with each other and build those social emotional skills. So that is rocking and rowing. Go ahead, feel free to thank your movement partner for joining you for this activity. It was great to have my cactus friend with me. And we are going to move on to our next, oh, I went back really far. Hold on, let me get us back to the right slide. I'm sorry about that. All right, we're gonna move on to Magic Rocks. Magic Rocks is a fantastic game. It's become kind of a classic at Project Commotion. I learned it when I was teaching theater a million years ago, and it's just so much fun. So before we jump into talking about how the game helps with connection, we're actually going to play the game. I would love to invite you, if you would like to stand up for this activity, you're welcome to. If you want to remain seated, that is also fantastic. But the game goes like this. When you hear me say magic rocks, you're going to make your body really, really small, like a tiny little rock. And I'm going to talk to you as if you were students in this activity, kind of like Annie did earlier with the stars and the hugs. So we're going to make tiny little rocks, and then you're going to turn your listening ears on. And I'm going to say something like magic rocks turn into dolphins. And then you're going to show me with your body, and if you want to, your voices, how you would move like a dolphin. I see lots of up and down, some diving movements. Nice. All right. Let's try another one. Magic rocks, get super, super small, like a tiny little rock. And magic rocks, let's turn into elephants. How are your elephants going to move today? I see a lot of elephant trunks, maybe some stomping. Elephants are pretty big. Awesome. Magic rocks. Can you turn into spiders? How would a spider move? Ooh, I see some creepy crawly fingers, some moving back and forth. A lot of times we get a lot of screaming when we're spiders. All right, let's do one more. Magic rocks. For this last one, go ahead and turn into your favorite animal. Show me how your favorite animal would move. I see some dogs. I'm doing a seated frog. Maybe some cats, lots of different animals. All right, magic rocks. Turn back into yourselves, into adults, into participants in this workshop. So I love magic rocks. It's so much fun. Students just like are so joyful about it. I usually end my classes with it, and by like the middle of the semester, I'm getting questions throughout the class of like, when is it time for magic rocks? They just have so much fun and joy with it. And that's a big part of why we do it. Like fostering connections with our students and children in our lives that are based on joy is just so important, and really just like builds a really trusting foundation if we know that people are safe to have fun with. Another way that we're able to really promote connection and understanding of our students through Magic Rocks is they are communicating how they observe the world when they are moving as a certain animal. So when you see all these different representations of elephants and dolphins and spiders, that's also the students telling you, this is how I see the world. These are the important things that I've put into my brain and processed, and now I'm reflecting them back to you. And as teachers, being able to know that component of it really helps us to be able to understand each individual child and the ways in which they're viewing the world so that we can support them more fully. It also really, really promotes children being able to connect with each other and observe each other. So I really love this photo. You can see that there being elephants in this photo. And you can see that most of the kids' eyes are on another kid. They're looking around at all of these different elephants. So they're seeing these diverse expressions of similar concepts. They're seeing different kids, different bodies express the same concepts in the same space, which can lead to them either having comments about that, like, oh, I didn't know elephants moved like that, or like, elephants don't move like that, they move like this. And then that opens up a bigger conversation. Or something that I see very often is someone will observe someone else during Magic Rocks and they'll try on each other's movement. So they're connecting with each other through these observational skills, and again, falling back on those foundations of nonverbal communication to be like, ooh, I like what your elephant is doing. I'm gonna try that on too through my body. And Magic Rocks is an opportunity just to like move all together as a collective class, as a collective group. Oftentimes in classroom settings, we're moving in small groups, or maybe we're sending students to go to a specialist for movement classes, but being able to move together in a group, even if it's just for a couple of minutes like we did, again, just really brings in that joy and connection piece all together. And then the last piece about Magic Rocks is it is so customizable. If you have a classroom of students that is just obsessed with underwater animals, this is the perfect place to do an entire Magic Rocks game about underwater animals. And not only does this, right, like support their cognitive understanding of what underwater animals are and maybe process some other things that you're talking about underwater animals in the classroom, but it shows your students, oh, my teacher really sees what I am excited about. My teacher knows what I'm excited about learning about, and they're letting me play with it. And that is really just, again, strengthening that bond and that connection that we have with our students. All right, that was Magic Rocks. Our last activity is movement relay. Excuse me, I'm just gonna get a sip of water here. So movement relay is our movement activity that does require a good deal of space. This is often one that's really great to do outdoors, or if you have access to a cafeteria or a gymnasium, it's a great one to do. We're actually going to watch a video about this movement activity. The video shows a group of students doing a movement relay as well as one student. And this can really be, again, customizable of having one student going across the floor and back with certain movements, or a group of students going like across a certain space and back between two boundaries. I'm going to try to show, I forgot to share my sound, so I'm going to get the video up for us.
And in the meantime, oh, it's already ready. Beautiful.
Got it ready? All right, I'll play this video a couple of times so that we're able to see it, and then we can go into talking about it a little bit more. All right, I'll play it one more time for us. All right, I'm gonna get us back to our slides. So that was, you saw a group doing movement relay and an individual doing movement relay. The group of children were doing bear walks, and you saw the individual student who was a little bit older than the first group of students that you saw, taking these circle mats and placing them and having to travel across the floor by jumping sideways across these different circle mats. And so movement relay is a really great way for students to practice turn taking and noticing where other people are in space. If you're doing it in a group, like we saw in the first part of the video, it's really, really great practice for students, you know, even if they're upside down, to be looking around and just like noticing where their peers are and figuring out how to move their bodies and negotiate the different ways to move across a large space with lots of other people. And if you're doing it where there's one person going across the floor at a time, like we saw in the second half of the video, we often have students create a lineup on one of the sides of the room. And that's a really great space for students to be able to be like, okay, who's gonna go when? Where am I gonna stand in line? And sometimes this might look like conflict resolution. Some people might be feeling frustrated about figuring out turn taking. And as educators, we're able, right, to like support them being able to move through that conflict. And so just like that negotiation is really, really great practice for being able to connect with other people, maybe have a little bit of like a conflict or problem solving and move through it back to a more settled place in their relationship with each other. Movement relay is also a fantastic place for teamwork, especially if you're doing more group activities, like in the first half of the video. Oftentimes we'll have like two students holding hands or linking arms and jumping across together. And they're having to fall back on all of those body-based nonverbal communication that we've been talking about to figure out how they're going to move together, because they can talk about it as much as they would like to talk about it, but ultimately they have to figure out how to connect through their bodies and make it across the floor with this big task. And lastly, this is also a really fun place for us as teachers to connect with our students. Oftentimes when we're doing this at Project Commotion, students will have a line. They'll line up against a wall, and the instructor will be at the opposite end of the boundary where they're coming to. And as students come toward them across the floor, they'll be able to offer like really big high fives as motivation and just like positive affirmations for them engaging with the activity. And that's just a really, really sweet piece of connection for us. Also, it's just like, it can be really nice, just like an individual connection moment. If you're working with a lot of students and you don't necessarily have a ton of that one-on-one time, even just like offering that big high five as students are coming across the floor is really, really lovely. And again, like with Magic Rocks, this is able, you can really, really tailor it to what students are interested in, where their growth points are. If you're working on jumping, if they're really, really excited about bears, you can have like a whole bear walk movement relay. And just, it's so open-ended that it really allows you to customize and again, show your students like, I'm listening to what you're excited about, I'm listening to what you need. Let's do this in a really, really fun way. So that is movement relay. I'd love to invite us all to take a deep breath together, because that was a lot of participation, a lot of learning, a lot of information. So let's just take a deep breath. And we are going to, oh yes, I see that someone raised their hand. Yeah.
Yeah, could you please show the slide of the first, before the magic rock, the rocking chair, something like that?
Sure, yeah, I can head back to that slide for a minute, the rocking and rowing slide.
Yeah, thank you. And I wonder, the magic rock is a large group activity or small group activity?
It can be either. I have done Magic Rocks with 2 children, and I've done it with 24 children. So it really depends on who you're working with, and it can be really customized to the group that you have in front of you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have any questions before we move on? Feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand or come off mute. I will try to pull up the chat here. Okay, I'm gonna move us on to our cool down, but we will have a whole Q&A section here in just a couple of minutes that we can chat some more.
Thank you, Marion. Oh, perfect timing for our cool down. So what is a cool down, right? You see lots of other words on this screen as well. The goal of a cool down is an intentional time or activity to provide structure for students to draw back to their own senses, to their own bodies, to check in after a period of active learning. So the The body needs time to process. The mind also needs time to process. And we want to cue to our students that we understand that their bodies need attention when they've been learning all day. And when we build that time into our classroom, we're telling our students that you don't have to be activated up and moving and energetic and attentive the whole day. You can be your full self in this classroom, because we recognize that your body needs rest just as much as it needs energizing activities. I included other words on the slide like rest, calm, pause, because it can be framed as any one of those things: a pause in the day, a time to rest, a time for calm, gentle movement. Integration might not be a classroom word, but I've included it for you all as educators to emphasize that it's not a period of not doing, it's a period of allowing processing to happen naturally. Let's try it out. It'll start just as we've started each activity with me, finding a nice comfortable seat, and Marion can spotlight my video once again. So get comfortable wherever you are. Allow your body to be heavy in your seat or on the floor. And you can close your eyes and take a big breath in. And let go. Another big breath in. You might roll the shoulders up to the ears, and on your exhale, you can let the shoulders come down the back. One more time like that, a nice shoulder roll up high. As you exhale, let your shoulders fall. From here, your eyes can stay closed and you can listen to my voice, or you can open your eyes and look at the screen. We'll bring our hands to the tops of our head. We're going to take a sweep down our entire body, from the top of our head, down our limbs, our arms, out our hands, across the chest and the front body, and the back body as well, down the hips and legs, the ankles and feet, just like the body scan, but this time we're sweeping away, getting rid of any tension, letting that leave our body. Maybe any anxiety, some exhaustion, stress, whatever it might be, continue to sweep down your body. Trusting that whatever needs to stay will stay with you, and you can still let go of that stress, activation. And from there, we'll go into a cross body. So crossing the arms and stroking down the arms, moving across the palms. Taking this a few times as a soothing action for our nervous system. And now that we've released tension, stress, or whatever it may be from our body, let's bring in something that we need. So bringing your hands one on top of the other onto this organ heart space. You might think of a word, an idea, a color, something that you'd like to bring into your body, into yourself, whether that's peace or love, ease. And we'll invite that in with a big breath, breathing into our hands. And as you exhale, you can give a little press with your hands, letting that word, idea, that color fill up your body, breathing it in, breathing it out, letting it flood from head to toe. One more breath like that. Breathing in whatever you need, and on the exhale, allowing it to spread within you. And we'll end like every other time, giving yourself a nice affirming squeeze. Relaxing, wiggling, anything else you need. And that will be our cool down. I'll emphasize one more time, it doesn't have to be that long. It could be 30 seconds. It could be 1 minute. You pick the part that most resonates and feels good for you or your students and use that. Thank you, Marion.
Absolutely. Thank you for that lovely cool down. We are going to transition into some time for some reflection and some takeaways. So we're going to go back to our Jamboard that we used at the very beginning. If you joined us partway through, we are going to be dropping the link in the chat to the Jamboard. When you click on that link, it's going to take you back to that first page where we put all of our movement activities that we really enjoyed as our icebreaker. And if you can see on my screen that I'm sharing right now, at the top, there's a little card. It'll say 1 out of 3. If you hit the arrow to the right, that'll take you to the next slide, which is where we're going to focus, which is what is one question that you have for us about any of the content we covered, any of the workshop, anything else that's coming up for you. And as always, if the Jamboard is not quite working on your end, feel free to put your questions in the chat or raise your hand and come off of mute. I'm going to share my screen and kind of go through that Jamboard process as well. And I believe that Annie just put the link in the chat. So this was our first page where we did all of our different childhood activities that we enjoyed. And I'm going to go to the next slide up here where we can put in questions that we have. And if you go over to this sticky note over here, you can add your questions. One question that I wanted to include that we get a lot is how do we modify these activities for a smaller classroom? The last 3 activities that we did, as well as our warm-ups and body scans. Annie, do you want to start by answering that one?
Yes. Several of the activities that we tried out today are doable in a classroom setting. As long as all of those bodies can fit inside the space, then you can do those activities. The warm up, the body scan, the cool down, those are very self-contained. So we hope that you'll be able to practice those easily in your classroom without having to modify much. For Magic Rocks, I suggest dividing the classroom and having some students wait and purely observe, and other students are doing the movement. You can have those students that are waiting, maybe they're creating a container for the game, and that container can change. It can shrink and they can get closer to the other students, or maybe it needs to spread out and they line up along the wall. But what's fun is that those students who are not actively playing can actively participate through the observation and also through suggesting animals or things for the other students to be. Otherwise, you can ask all of your students to make really tiny shapes if you need to. Do you have any other suggestions, Marion?
I think that all sounds really, really great. Okay, I love all of these questions coming in. I think we'll have time to get to all of them, so keep adding as well. I saw one of how do we incorporate these movements with a toddler who is very active? I love active toddlers. I mentioned at the beginning, I'm an infant toddler specialist. These activities are fantastic for very active toddlers. Some of the cognitive concepts might not be quite there yet, but toddlers are really learning, like with Magic Rocks, like they know kind of what sounds animals make, and they're learning how to move their bodies. And so I think incorporating any of these activities, if you have a toddler who loves to move, is really, really fantastic, because A lot of times when we see toddlers who are super, super active and kind of constantly on the move, it's telling us that they actually need some more sensory input to help them regulate themselves. And so something like rocking and rowing, where you're offering them that kind of like backwards, almost upside down movement that they might not be able to access themselves quite yet, is providing a ton of sensory input to them that can really meet those needs that are often seen as like moving around really, really fast. I also think that like very active toddlers are very, very common. Toddlers are creating so many connections in their brain at any given moment in the day that it makes sense that they're just like always on the go. And so whether you're a parent of a toddler or in a classroom with toddlers, making space in your day to incorporate movement activities throughout the day that are a little bit more structured can really, really support them, not only having that free play time where they can move around and do whatever they like, but help them start to build these skills through movement that can help them regulate their own bodies. So they know as they get older, ooh, like I feel like I have a lot of like really big moving energy in my body right now. My teacher taught me all these different games and activities that I can do. I'm going to do that to help my body feel good and calm down. That is a fantastic question. I'm also happy to chat more in detail about toddlers if anyone needs. I see the request for putting email in the chat. We will put all of our contact information in the chat at the end, as well as in our follow-up email. Annie, do you want to respond to any of these other awesome questions?
Yes, I do. So someone asked, how do you do these activities if you don't have materials? Maybe you're asking about the relay, because the other activities should only involve bodies. So if you have bodies, you can do them. In terms of the relay, it depends on the age level of your students, but if you do have the space to do a relay, but you don't have the materials, it's great to provide different, be very clear about what the children are supposed to do in each space. So as long as you can separate the spaces, either with a shoe, if you're outside, take off your shoe and put it on the grass. And from our starting point to the shoe, everyone is going to dance, dance, dance all the way there. And then from the shoe to the tree, everyone is going to hold hands and run together. Make it really clear. That might require a lot of demonstration and repetition, depending on the age group. And then as children grow older, it's fun for them to use their own bodies to build shapes or structures that other students can move through in the relay with. Like someone could be on their hands and their knees or on their belly and make an obstacle for another student to jump over. That can be really dangerous though, and requires a lot of trust, but it's a fun risk-taking activity as well if you do have that trust and safety established in your classroom. And that would be for older students. Anything to add to that, Marion?
I think that's great. I think like Annie said, most of these activities, we really wanted to offer these to you in part because they don't require a lot of materials. We know that oftentimes materials are hard to come by, or they're hard to organize, or it's just like a lot easier to not have to deal with supplies. And so, yeah, just offering these as a way of like, you are able to support your students in building connections and moving in lots of different activities, as long as you both have bodies, which you do. I wanted to respond to the question about how do we respond to a child who refuses to participate? Participation is something I think about a lot, and at Project Commotion, we work a lot with students who have diverse needs, disabilities, who are neurodivergent. So we see a lot of different levels of participation. And something that I always ask teachers when they're talking to me about a student who isn't participating is to tell me what that child is doing. What does a refusal to participate look like for that child? Oftentimes when I'm getting into a classroom for the first time, if I'm doing a residency, I have a couple of students who don't want to participate at all, but what they do is they sit on the side and they watch. And I really want to empower all of us as educators to view watching and observation as a form of active participation. Children who are sitting and who you can see they're watching the activities, they're following along with what is going on. What they are doing is they are looking at the space, the activities, the people, and they're asking themselves, is this place safe for me? Is this a safe place for me to participate in the activities that you are doing? And some children just need some more time to think about that and process before they jump in. Oftentimes when I have students who are doing this kind of sitting on the sidelines and observing, within a few weeks, they are up and participating in one activity through the class or for the whole class. They just needed that time to make sure that the space I was creating was safe. And by honoring the fact that they needed to observe, I've created a foundation of trust and respect with that child. So they know that I don't think they're refusing to participate to try to be difficult, but they're not participating because they're not ready yet. So that's one type of different type of participation that you might see in a classroom. Another thing that we might see is students who are very, very vocal about not wanting to participate or unhappy that they have to participate, or feeling they don't want to feel like they have to do something. And sometimes that can feel a little bit trickier. And in those instances, I often ask myself, I'm often with students who I don't know very well, doing residencies. So I'm often meeting like a ton of students for the first time all the time. And in those cases, I check in with either a parent or a teacher who knows that child well. And I might ask some questions about what helps this child participate. But if I don't have access to another teacher or a family in that way, I try to really respect when students are setting those boundaries of if they're really, really unhappy and they really don't want to participate, I don't want to force them to do something that's going to make them unhappy, because that's not going to help us build a strong relationship with each other. Something that I might do is before or after class, I might tell them what we're going to do that day. I might be like, hey, here's our plan for the day. Here are the different activities we're going to do. I wanted you to know in case you would like to join at any point. I'm not going to force you to, but I want you to know that that option is open for you. And then as I get to know students a little bit more, I might encourage them to say, hey, do you want to try joining one activity today that we're doing? Do you want to do one stretch with us? Those students often also respond to like, do you want to lead us in a stretch or an activity? And so I think for me, it really boils down to there's a reason that a student doesn't want to participate, and I want to do my best to find out what that reason is so that I can build a strong relationship with them. And I know that when I do have a strong relationship with them, we are going to get to a place of participation because they're going to feel safe in my class. That was a very long-winded answer. I love talking about participation, and I want us to make sure that we have time to get to other questions. Annie, do you want to choose another one?
Yeah, that was great though. It's a good reminder for me as well. I think we always need those reminders when we're in the same setting often, that things are different for each child. So I appreciate that too. I want to address the question, how often to change and keep an activity. I personally relate to the experience of worrying about repetition and feeling like I have to come up with something new every day, whether I'm teaching a movement class or working with a child that day. And repetition is extremely supportive for children, especially because, and for us as adults, when we know what to expect, we can approach a situation with an understanding of how we relate to it, right? So if we do magic rocks every day at noon, and I'm really tired one day, but I know that magic rocks is coming, maybe I'll save my energy and skip out on one activity that we do before noon, and instead save myself and save my energy to participate in that game, make that active choice around it. Also, within the game itself, there are so many new opportunities every time you play it to notice something different. And rather than changing the game, you might ask your students a different question every time and repeat questions. An example could be, what do you notice of the other students around you one day? But then the next day, the question could be, can you change your shape to look like someone else who you see? And maybe the next time the question could be, what can you add to your shape to make this more silly, or more to make a happy animal, a sad animal, whatever it may be. So there are endless possibilities within repetition. And I think Marion has some great advice on this subject as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like this also really relates to the question that's on the Jamboard about engaging kids for concentration during the movement activity. I know some of you might be specialists going into classrooms. Some of you might be students who are getting ready to go into a classroom. Some of you may already be in an early childhood classroom or with older youth. Something that I think about is if I'm leading a class, I often have to go at a faster pace than I need to go like for myself and my own learning. And especially when we're talking about movement, understanding that attention spans really differ for every student, and kind of finding that like quick pace where we're able to really experience an activity all together, but that it's not going to go on too long where I'm losing focus or losing concentration or students are feeling bored. And so I'm thinking about making the transition points clear and moving through my activities at a really steady pace. And then if you're seeing these students again, if you're seeing them with any frequency, we have time to come back to that tomorrow, the next day, the next week. I think I mentioned this when I was talking about Magic Rocks. I had a distance learning online Zoom movement class with some preschoolers this past year. We did Magic Rocks every single week. They loved the repetition. I also had a very similar structure to my class. We started with a specific warm-up, then we did a couple of different games, then we danced to a song, then we did Magic Rocks. And they just loved that. And so even though each time, each activity was really only like 5 to 7 minutes long, we came back to it with enough frequency that they were able to get that practice and build that schedule for themselves. And they really enjoyed that. So yeah, it is really a balance of like kind of finding that like steady, consistent way to move through a class, but making sure that things don't go on too long to where you're losing kiddos. And ultimately, I think it's really based on the group of kiddos that you have in front of you. Some groups of kids are going to be like, I could do Magic Rocks for 10 hours. And some kids are going to be like, I have 3 minutes of this game in me and that's all I have. And so as you're meeting more students and getting a sense of your group dynamics, oftentimes that just becomes a practice that we change up as we go. I saw we have a question about modifying for an after-school program and making it more challenging for older elementary grades. In terms of modifying for an after-school program, I don't know if there are any specific modifications necessarily. I think the hope here is that you're kind of getting some ideas of some movement activities that you can infuse into the programming that you're already doing. But in terms of older elementary grades, we really want to think about helping students reach their growth edges and their challenge points. So, right, like with rocking and rowing, you know, just having two students together rocking back and forth might not be a challenge for them. But what might be a challenge is they have to start on their backs and try to stand up all the way by holding each other's hands. And so thinking about, you know, especially as we get to like students who are like 7, 8, older than that, they really, really have a lot of different skills. And so you can kind of start to think about what would be a challenge for you, and offer that to them, because oftentimes things that are challenges for us as adults are either challenges to those age groups, or things that are like really exciting. They're being like, yeah, I know how to do that and I want to practice it and show you. I think also when you're getting to these older grade levels, ask the students. They have a ton of language at that point. They have a ton of experience being in their bodies, playing different games. They know what they like. They know what they're excited about. And by offering them the agency to kind of come up with different movement activities, just like when we're tailoring activities to be a certain theme for our students, it's showing that you're an invested teacher. You're really invested in what these students are excited about, and you're invested in like maintaining that relationship by offering them some leadership in the class. Annie, is there anything else you'd add to that one?
I would only add that specificity with directions is helpful for older students. So I see, Jordan, that you have to do 30 minutes of physical activity per day. And we do want to recognize that there are many different state and county requirements that require movement as a specific thing, that require movement as exercise, jumping jacks, push-ups, whatever it may be. So I think the movement relay is an awesome way to do that, because you can make it short, you can make it long, you can you know, have students do many repetitions, but the specificity component makes it more challenging, as well as the activities that Marion was saying. You know, if it's challenging for you, it'll be challenging for them most likely, whether that's jumping up really high and then crawling on the ground, one right after the other. But the specificity of directions, I think, of making the movement relay really detailed, like, okay, on this square, you're going to hop around this square, and then you're going to run around it and hop over it before you go to the next one. They're practicing memory skills as well. The hardest part, I think, is remembering it as the instructor sometimes. So if you write it down before, that can be helpful. And I think we've touched on all of these questions now, but we will include our contact information in the chat. And please feel free to write to us, especially Marion. Marion is working with students very actively all the time. And I think that they are an incredible resource to talk to if you have questions. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for all of these questions. These were really, really fantastic. I want to invite us to go back to the Jamboard, and again, hit that right click arrow, and think about what is one way that you want to bring movement into your teaching setting to promote and support that meaningful connection with students. Something that I always really appreciate in workshops is if I'm able to leave the workshop with something specific that I can implement the next time I'm in the classroom. And so we really wanted to offer the Jamboard as a space for you all to drop in some things that you're maybe thinking about trying when you get to a classroom, or if you're already in a classroom the next time you're with your students. And we will take a screenshot of this and send it out with our follow-up email so that you'll be able to see what everyone's ideas were, and get some ideas of how you can bring it into your classroom. So trying the cool down before nap time. The cool down is great before nap time. Doing the movement relay outside. Yes, outside movement relays are the best. Breathing exercises to help your toddler calm down after a meltdown. Absolutely. The outside relay, yeah. These are all great ideas. You're also welcome to put them in the chat. And if you do put them in the chat, we can add them, Annie and I can add them to the Jamboard afterwards. Outdoor activities to get the kids outside, yes. Combining movement and outdoor activities is fantastic just because of the space and the lack of constraints. I'll give us a couple more minutes to write down any ideas that you might have. Movements to burn some energy in preparation for a good night's rest. Absolutely. Doing some pretty hefty movement before bed or before nap time can really, really help kiddos just conk out and get some good sleep, which is so helpful for all of us. An outdoor movement puzzle. Yeah, we do lots of obstacle courses at Project Commotion, and especially with the older students. I know we had a question about that. They get to help build the obstacle course, which is really, really fun. Trying Magic Rock as an indoor and an outdoor activity. Yep, it can be great for all kinds of different settings. Obstacle courses, Magic Rocks. Awesome. Feel free to keep adding. I'm going to head us back to to Zoom. Sometimes this happens. I'm just going to get back. I'm going to bring us back to our slides. As I said, feel free to keep adding ideas of how you'd like to bring this into your classrooms. We're going to thank you all for such fantastic participation. It was really lovely to get to see all your ideas and hear the questions that you're thinking about. It's always really, really great for Annie and I and other folks who are presenting at Project Commotion to get a sense of the questions that feel really important so that we can make our workshops really relevant for you all. We do have a couple of other workshops coming up that Annie is co-leading, and I want to let her chat about those in case you'd be interested in joining us.
Thank you. Yes, so Monterey County, they put on educational series and conferences virtually, just similar to Teach for the Bay as well. So Project Commotion is doing 3 different workshops through the fall and winter of next year, and they're focused on different aspects of child development and movement. So the first coming up this Saturday is focused on gross motor activities, meaning big whole body movements, and why that supports young child development, social, emotional, physical, as well as cognitive. We'll go to a brain level and look at what's happening in the brain and why movement is important. The second workshop will focus on our sensory systems and our hidden senses, the ones we don't always talk about. We'll offer movement activities to support whole sensory development. And then the last one will be more of a coaching project where we'll have a lot of interaction and talk about how we can use our specific spaces. So different teachers from Project Commotion will help you, and you'll share an inside look into your classroom or more details into what you do have available as resources. So we want to make that one super, super useful and practical. I put some information in the chat, the website you can go to. Truthfully, I was having a hard time figuring out how other people could get that link, that register link on the flyer. So just know that this flyer will be included after when we send a follow-up email, and you can use your device if you have a camera to scan that code to sign up, and that will be free to all, and it will happen in English with Spanish translation, live Spanish translation. Thank you.
Here we're going to drop some info in the chat about where you can find more about Project Commotion. So our website, our Instagram, Facebook, some social media, and we also have a YouTube channel that we started using more in earnest at the beginning of the pandemic. And we were posting different videos that were movement activities directed for students. So these are things that if you have some time in your classroom, if you want to pull up and share with students, there are activities that we can do all together. And there's also some resources on there, teacher tips, teacher workshops of like how to teach certain activities. So feel free to use that resource. Annie put my email in the chat. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions or just want to chat more. And the last link that Annie put in the chat is the certificate of completion for this workshop. So if you follow that link, you can download the template that will say you completed creative movement for connection with Project Commotion during Teach for the Bay. You can add your name for it, and then you will be good to go with a certificate. Wow, we are right on time. Thank you all so much for moving and learning with us today. It was really, really lovely to get to hear from all of you and to get to spend this morning and early afternoon with you.
Thank you all so much. I echo that. And we will send a follow-up email. It will have a link to the recording where you can view that. We did lose about 3 minutes of the recording after our break. That was my mistake and I apologize, but you will have the slides available to fill in the gaps and you didn't miss much. It was pretty, it hopefully will be pretty seamless. So you'll have that all available to you in a follow-up email. And please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you all.